Deploying Windows 365 is easy. If you are already using Intune, then you are simply one licensing assignment and 4 questions away from creating your first cloud PC. In this session, I'm going to give you a tour of how to deploy Windows 365, and we'll also deep dive on a few advanced topics. The purpose of this session is to upskill you to deliver and help with a POC and pilot of Windows 365. Call this Getting Started, Intro to Windows 365, or Windows 365 101. Bottom line, my intent is that by the end of this session, you have a strong familiarity of how to deploy Windows 365. The next step is on you of actually doing it yourself. Speaking to that, what I've noticed is that when customers create a cloud PC, they're able to grasp the value of Windows 365 has to offer the most. They get to experience the simplicity that we've created in a SaaS-based solution. That is what I want to leave you with, easy and simple. And I'm going to demonstrate that via mini live demos over the course of this session. Customers that have Intune already adopt Windows 365 the fastest and the easiest. At the end of this session, I'll provide a link where you can request trial licenses. Let's begin. The first decision you need to make is to acquire licenses. Windows 365 has 11 different licensing types. As you can see on the screen here, we have a variety of 2-core, 4-core, and 8-core SKUs. There's 11 in total. What we find most is that customers are choosing the 4-core SKUs. Some start with the 2-core, which are the bare minimums for Windows 365 apps and also Teams. We find most customers are most productive in finding the greatest value out of the 4-core SKUs. The 8-core SKUs are also great. They also support nested virtualization. Next, we'll move to the Intune Management Portal. And this is where all administration for Windows 365 takes place. All Windows 365 Enterprise Cloud PCs are Intune managed, and Intune serves as the management control plane. Yes, co-management is also supported. So you've already acquired your licenses. Now let's jump into creating a provisioning policy. To do that, within the Intune portal, navigate to Devices. Scroll down to where you see Windows 365. Select Provisioning Policies. Select Create, and we're going to name it. Part of those 4 questions is we're going to ask you the join type, what type of network you want to connect to, what the region is. We'll ask you what type of image you want to start with. And then lastly, a new feature that we came out with is language packs. We'll orchestrate the installation of that. But let's first start with join type. Our hero scenario is to Azure AD join your cloud PCs. We also have the option of hybrid Azure AD join, and I'm going to get into this later. But our hero scenario is Azure AD join, and that allows you to continue your journey on modern management. Next is to select network. You can choose to bring your own Azure subscription that has a virtual network, or you can select one of our provided Microsoft hosted networks. When you select a Microsoft hosted network, an Azure subscription is not required. So if you select Azure AD Join and Microsoft hosted network, there is no requirement to bring an Azure subscription. This is a great way to trial and to get started. Once you complete that, you get to select one of our 20 existing and ever-growing regions that we support Cloud PC into. In this example, I'm going to pick West US 2. So if you already made 2 decisions, let's go with the third, and that's an image. You can choose to create a custom image and import that and leverage it, although we encourage use to a gallery image. These are provided images that help you with your deployment. There are Windows 11 and Windows 10, and they support a variety of the feature packs. There's 2 base images. There's one that has and includes Microsoft 365 apps, and one that doesn't. In this example, I'm going to pick the latest, Windows 11 with Microsoft 365 apps, version 22H2. The next setting is language packs. This is a feature that is in preview currently. We will select your language pack. In this example, I will pick German. And what we'll do during the creation of the cloud PC is orchestrate the installation of the language pack for the cloud PC. And since I picked M365 apps in my image before, we'll also orchestrate the installation of the German language pack to coincide and synchronize with the operating system. So you have a complete immersive language experience. Lastly, if you're using Windows 365 Enterprise, you already support the requirements in order to opt into Windows Auto Patch, which is a new service. And that's it. Those are the 4 questions. The last is just to assign this provisioning policy to your group of users that you assigned your licenses to. We'll get a review and create page. You hit create, and the provisioning begins. And whether you select 1, 10, or 100, or even 1,000, it takes about an hour for all of them. Once they've been created, you can view them in the All Cloud PCs node. Here you get to see all of my cloud PCs, what image was used, if they're connected to an Azure network, what license type, and also what their provisioning status is. Because all cloud PCs are Intune managed, you get all of the benefits of Intune with your cloud PCs. But there are some additional benefits and integrations that we've made to make it a better experience. One of those is remote actions. Up along the top, you'll notice that for the cloud PCs, it looks a little bit different than what it does for a physical Windows PC. We only have sync, restart, but there's a couple of new features. Restore, regular snapshots of the cloud PC, and you can revert it back to a good known snapshot in the event of an issue. You can also reprovision. This is similar to wipe, factory reset, where we'll perform a factory reset and take it back to its original state. Resize. A cloud PC is great because it has some additional superpowers. Resize is one of them, where if you selected a license type that was 2-core and you decide, hey, I want to upgrade to a 4-core or even an 8-core, then you have that option to resize it. No data is lost. Everything's preserved. After you perform the resize action, we'll perform a reboot of the cloud PC and we'll expand the disk. We'll set the new memory type and also set the proper CPU on this. You can both resize up and resize down. So in that example, if you had an 8-core and you need to resize it back down to a 4-core, we also support that. Lastly is we have a new feature where you can place a cloud PC in what we call under review or legal hold. What this provides is ability for e-discovery or to prevent access to that cloud PC in order to perform forensic analysis. On the left-hand side, you get all of the same benefits of Intune and what it provides and offers. There's a couple of newer things that we've added. One is around user connectivity, where we'll enumerate if there are any errors with connectivity, if users are having problems connecting to their PC. Another one in preview is we perform connectivity checks on the PCs daily to ensure that they're available and ready to be connected to. And you get to see the status of those. Again, this is a new preview feature. But with all of that said, let me show you how to connect to your cloud PC after you've connected. I'm going to navigate to office.com. And just as I connect to any of my other M365 resources of Outlook webmail or Teams on the web, or Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, I'm able to get to my cloud PC. I'm going to click on the waffle, and you can see Windows 365 here. It's going to open up, and it's going to show me a list of all of my cloud PCs. And I have one assigned to me. All I have to do is click Open in the browser. And what it's going to do at this point in time is begin the negotiation of connecting to my cloud PC. I can configure a couple of settings in terms of redirection, where it makes some of the capabilities of my local PC available to my cloud PC. I'll enter my password. Later this calendar year, we will have single sign-on support, and you will not have to enter your password again in order to connect. And there you go. You're connected to your cloud PC within a web browser. So this is the easiest way to connect to your cloud PC. We also have full desktop clients for Windows, Mac. We have Android and iOS clients, and we also have our web client. We also have a new Microsoft 365 apps client that is specific, and you'll hear about that more at Ignite. Now that I've shown you how to create a cloud PC and how to connect to your cloud PC, let's go back and look at some more of the more advanced options available. The one that I want to talk to you about is, and I showed this briefly when creating a provisioning policy, is hybrid Azure AD join, and also bringing your own Azure Network Connection. You are able to select Azure AD join and bring your own Azure subscription. In order to do that, you first have to make a connection between Windows 365 and your Azure subscription. In order to do that, we have to create a Azure Network Connection. So going back to the main Windows 365, select Azure Network Connection, and you'll notice the list of pre-existing connections that I've made. I'm going to click Create, And it depends upon your join type of Azure AD join or hybrid. You have to make a connection based upon either of those. So I'm going to select Azure AD join. It's going to ask me the name, my join type, what subscription I'm in, resource group, virtual network, and subnet. As you can see, I don't have access to this. And the reason is my account does not have access to any Azure subscriptions. In order to fix this, there's a dialog box that explains this. Simply click on that and it'll tell you the permissions needed. Basically, network contributor role is the primary role that is needed. Once you've done that, you go through and create it. It's going to ask you these questions. And this exact subnet that you created in this virtual network within this resource group and this subscription is where those cloud PCs are going to be created if you select it in your provisioning policy. After you've created the Azure Network Connection, we perform a series of checks to make sure that deployment of the cloud PCs is going to be successful. You'll notice that some of the checks that I've created in the past here are in a failed state. So let's dive more into that. So for this example here this one is in a failed state. It's a hybrid check, and we perform different checks between a hybrid and an Azure AD join. So let's dive more into the hybrid. So if I click on it, you'll see a list of all of the checks that we perform and also their status. We've provided a view detail. So if you want to understand more about what this check is and also how to learn more to fix the issue, we provided those hyperlinks right with the management portal. Here's another one with error. You can view the details and learn specifically about it. For this one, it looks like Azure AD is not configured properly. It's important when you perform hybrid Azure AD join. The requirement for that is that those cloud PCs created have a networking line of sight access to the domain controller. So the Azure virtual network that you create must have networking line of sight through a site-to-site connection or express route to your domain controller in order to complete that hybrid Azure AD join process. Now you could selectively choose Azure AD join. That does not have that requirement because when you Azure AD join a device, all it needs is an internet connection directly to Azure to complete that. But when choosing hybrid Azure AD join, all of your cloud PCs will be hybrid Azure AD join. So the point of these checks serves to ensure that you have a first time run success. So let's go back and talk about creating a provisioning policy. In that example, I had selected hybrid and selectively choose there is no connections available. The reason for that is none are in a good state. So I need to go back and fix those. So provisioning will not be allowed if your Azure network connection is in a failed state. It makes no sense to allow a provisioning to continue knowing that there's going to be an issue which will cause those cloud PCs to fail provisioning. So we block the ability to create a cloud PC. You notice if I selected Azure AD join, the ANCs that support Azure AD join are available for me to select and choose. An important point of this in these checks that are created is that you make sure that all of the endpoints for Intune, Windows Virtual Desktop, Office, and others are accessible on your Azure firewall if you are using that with your virtual network. Let's take a quick look at some of the most common failures that customers have with their Azure network connections. You'll see them listed here. All the checks on the left-hand side, what percentages of customers hit those failures, both for hybrid Azure AD join and Azure AD join. And there's a brief explanation on there. So frequently what we're hearing and seeing is that hybrid Azure AD join customers have not properly configured their virtual network to connect back to their domain controller. They have not configured no connectivity. Azure AD Connect is not set up properly, enabling hybrid Azure AD join, or their passwords are wrong. DNS is also a main issue where if you deploy objects into that virtual network and you attempt to domain join them, you have to make sure that your DNS can resolve your Active Directory domain name. That's why we see most issues within this hybrid Azure AD join. When those ANC checks are run, we actually go through every 6 hours the process of creating a virtual machine in that VNet and attempt to perform a domain join and a hybrid domain join and run through all of those checks. So we have a high utility of checks and quality on that every 6 hours. You'll notice that that ANC virtual machine that gets created will also be in your Active Directory that you had selected. Don't be alarmed by that and don't delete it. It'll constantly be recreated every 6 hours. With Azure AD Join, there is no dependency on on-premise Active Directory. Therefore, majority of all the checks pass. Now let's talk a little bit deeper about provisioning. The way I like to talk about provisioning is relating it to Autopilot. Most everyone is very familiar with the flow of Autopilot, but let's root ourselves in kind of the foundations of it. When you get an Autopilot device, the first thing you do is you boot it. You're going to configure language, keyboard, network. It's going to go out and do a check to see if an Autopilot profile is available. If it is, it'll put the device in Autopilot mode. You'll next be prompted for a user login. And after you authenticate, then it kicks off the Autopilot process. Autopilot will orchestrate Azure AD Join or Hybrid Azure AD Join enrollment. There's a device ESP phase, that's the enrollment status phase, where anything targeted towards the device object, apps, settings, configurations will install. There's a natural break with the first start animation. I call it the disco, where it's blinking. Behind that is where user profile disk is being created. And then you're back in ESP for the account setup phase, or the user phase, as we often call it. And anything you target towards the user, app, settings, configurations are going to be installed in that. And when all of that's completed, you're at the desktop. This is Autopilot user-driven mode. The end user is driving all of these actions within it. Within a cloud PC, we orchestrate the creation of a cloud PC completely. During the provisioning, after you create that provisioning policy, we'll create a VM, we'll domain join it, we'll Intune enroll it, we'll install the remote desktop agent, and we'll perform some post-provisioning actions. All of those are orchestrated. The end of provisioning, your cloud PC will be in an online waiting mode, waiting for that first user to log into it, whether they connect minutes after provisioning is done, hours, or a few days. It's going to be running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The end user, in my example, I showed you how to use the web browser client. They connect to it. You're still going to go through the process of a user profile or the first start animation. If you selectively choose to use the enrollment status page, that will be shown. So any applications targeted towards the user, just like on a physical device, will also install on a cloud PC. And when all of that's done, you're at the desktop. One of the key points of this is during that online waiting phase here, the cloud PC is running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's waiting for that end user to connect. The Intune agent is still performing checks. So the quickest way in order to get apps and settings and configurations is to use filters. There is a known slight delay when using Azure AD groups, especially dynamic, because that will have to calculate group membership, and then Intune will have to apply those policies, and then the cloud PC will have to perform a sync operation. Filters are more or less instantaneous, so we encourage you to leverage filters when and where possible. The other benefit of using filters is that you can create a filter based upon a provisioning policy. We have a document in our doc repository that demonstrates that. The last point I want to leave you with is that when you use a gallery image, like I selected in my example for a provisioning profile, that should be thought of as synonymous to the OEM image that you get for your Autopilot. And what this means to you as a desktop administrator for Intune is that you can align your provisioning of your cloud PC with the same processes and procedures that you provision your physical PCs, using the same filters, the same groups, the same targeting mechanisms of apps and settings, because a cloud PC should be managed and governed in the exact same way a physical PC should be managed and governed. What that means is all the same applications you target towards a physical PC are applicable to a cloud PC. All the same settings you apply are applicable to a cloud PC. The one difference is a cloud PC has some additional capabilities and superpowers. The other point I want to make is that you should align your provisioning of a cloud PC with that of your physical PCs. In this example, I showed you how closely they're related. In fact, they're so close that all the same applications, settings, and configurations that you target towards your cloud PC are also applicable to your physical PC and vice versa. All the same settings you apply to your physical PC are applicable to your cloud PC. What that means is you can leverage the same filters, the same targeting mechanisms, and all the same processes and procedures in your provisioning. That includes the image selection. I demonstrated when creating a provisioning policy using a gallery image. That should be thought of as synonymous to the OEM image that you get on your Autopilot devices, your physical devices, where it's a vanilla image. Our gallery images are updated monthly. They include some additional capabilities like M365 apps, and those are to make things a lot quicker and easier. But they are starting points. And then through the same process of Autopilot, our Cloud PC provisioning, and following your same process of targeting applications and settings, you could layer on and transform that particular gallery image, in our case, into what the desired state is by the time the end user hits the desktop. A frequent question I get asked is, how do you stay current with all of the changes of Windows 365? We're continuing to innovate month over month. And the best way to do that is by going to our documentation. As you can see on the screen, I'm at the Microsoft documentation repository for Windows 365. Under the overview, there is a what's new. This is the best way to stay updated of what's new and coming. In here, we publish everything that's new and the highlights of that, also with links to further documentation. To know what's coming, you can both look in the features and development, and we provide links and information about what is coming really soon. But more further out, you can go to the M365 roadmap to find more items that have a longer term lead time. When you're there, make sure you select Product and go to Windows 365. That'll filter the results to show exactly the items specific to Windows 365. Whether you are new to Windows 365 or experienced, I guarantee you learned something new in this session. Again, the point I want to leave you with is simplicity. It is even more simple if you're using Intune already today. Remember, you are one licensing assignment away and 4 questions from creating your first cloud PC. As promised, here's a link to request a trial license and additional information. Thank you, and have a great day.